This is a Clovis spear point. It is the greatest technological breakthrough of the Stone Age, and long thought to be the oldest human artifact unearthed in the Americas. For years, these Stone Age weapons of mass destruction were thought to represent a culture of prehistoric big game hunters who came over a land bridge from Asia to become the first Americans. The theory became known as Clovis-First. It was written into the textbooks and taught for the better part of a century. The Clovis spear point became the oldest human artifact ever found in America. Clovis-First was such a powerful story that for years, few archaeologists looked back beyond 13,500 years ago. But then, a few did.
Yeah, so a principal reason behind the intense skepticism surrounding pre-Clovis sites is that there have been many such sites thought to have been discovered that were later properly dismissed for lack of sufficient evidence, such as tool springs in Nevada, Holyoke in Delaware, and Calico Hills in California.
Most prominent people in the Clovis-First intellectual campaign characterized were Thomas Diana Dinkhouse.
The most prominent people in the Clovis-First intellectual encampment characterized in signs as the Clovis police were Thomas Lynch, Diana Dinkhouse, Paul Martin, and Stevens Haynes.
On the other end, those supporting a pre-Clovis arrival in the New World most prominently have included Tom de la Haye, James Audiovisual and Dennis Stanford, Alan Bryan and Ruth Groon, and Jacques Cinq-Mars.
The phrase Clovis police was so commonly applied to the protectors of the Clovis-First theory that numerous entries were listed on an internet search, even after modifying it to Clovis police archaeology to eliminate references to the police department.
Yeah, I worry that rigid skepticism has become a cult or habit for some people.
Proponents and skeptics alike speak of a pre-12,000 BP occupation as a pre-Clovis one.
Although pre-Clovis has an inherent bias, the term is so prevalent that it will be used here.
Yeah, so a principal reason behind the intense skepticism surrounding pre-Clovis sites is that there have been many such sites thought to have been discovered that were later properly dismissed for lack of sufficient evidence, such as Tool Springs in Nevada, Holyoke in Delaware, and Calico Hills in California.
Yeah, so for me it is difficult to understand how an academically trained scientist can contend that scientific observations in one case are either stronger or weaker because of unrelated observations in another instance made at a different time and a different place.
Just below the surface I'm standing on is where the conventional Clovis-First model says that the earliest material should stop, basically, that there ought not to be anything beneath it, no matter how much deeper we dug. The artifacts simply continued, and we recovered blades like this all the way down to 16,000 BC.
Advocates of a pre-12,000 human population assert that their evidence is valid and is rejected by skeptics only because of a deep-set historical biases. That assertion is not well-founded.
No. The long-reigning theory that no pre-12,000 Americans existed had no basis, in fact. Such a belief is of course not science, and it is not logical. It is in fact more like a religious dogma.
Perhaps if we stop looking so hard for early man, we shall someday find them.
For over half a century, and with increasing rancor over the last few decades, archaeologists have sought and disputed evidence of a human presence in the America that predates the Clovis archaeological culture.
No one blinks when a researcher changes the earliest date for African toolmaking by 200,000 years. But explosions go off if someone suggests a change in the first immigration to the Americas of 1,000 or 2,000 years. Why is that?
When he published his findings, he was immediately attacked.
The majority of the archaeological community was acutely skeptical, and they invented all kinds of reasons why these dates couldn't possibly be right.
When you dig deeper than Clovis, a lot of people do not report it because they're worried about the reaction of their colleagues.
I've been accused of planting artifacts. People will reject radiocarbon dates just simply because there's not supposed to be any people here at those times. And it just goes on and on and on.
Eventually, a few other archaeologists began to report evidence questioning the Clovis-First Theory, and they too were attacked.
The best way in the world to get beaten up professionally is to claim you have a pre-Clovis site.
It does highlight a larger certainty. The first site to break the Clovis barrier will have to be utterly unimpeachable in all respects.
The Monteverde site was excavated from 1977 to 1985 and subsequently analyzed by Tom Delahaye and an international and interdisciplinary team of nearly 80 collaborators. At Monteverde, Delahaye was in the envious position of having direct evidence of a human presence in what was judged to be a clear human footprint. Radiocarbon dates on wood showed that humans lived at the site at least 12,500 years ago.
It took 2 decades for it to be recognized, and its principal investigator, Tom Delahaye of the University of Kentucky, Lexington, campaigned hard to win converts.
Since finishing the excavations, Delahaye has directed a painstaking analysis in a volume of over 1,000 pages. The effort was analytical overkill, yet overkill was necessary given the great skepticism facing this or any potentially early site.
Because of the historically intense frenzied might be more appropriate scrutiny of any challenge to the Clovis-First model, Delahaye did not publish his final report until 20 years after he began the excavation.
What surprised me on the other side of the coin was the stiff, closed-mindedness of many North American archaeologists. There were some North American archaeologists, particularly those who worked in Latin America, Alan Bryan, Ruth Gruen, a few others, open-minded. Of course, Monteverde, they sort of fit the paradigm they were expecting. But I found Europeans much more open-minded. But some of the North American colleagues were very difficult to deal with, and I think at times presenting a very unhealthy atmosphere, cutting us off before we could present the data at meetings, not talking with us about it, refusing to even look at the data, this sort of thing. And plus, politically, from time to time, there were some difficult moments. At my home institution later on, when I left Chile, a letter was sent to a dean with anonymous signatures of about 24, 25 people saying this guy doesn't even have a PhD, a lie, of course. You should fire him from the university for what he's doing, and so on. And another colleague who sent a letter to the newspaper in Chile, one of the major newspapers, saying that Monteverdi was creation of the CIA to implant me down there. And, you know, that puts you and your family in a dangerous situation in a country like that at that time.
Also, in 1997, what archaeology termed a Blue Ribbon Commission of first American scientists conducted a site visit at Monteverde. In October 1997, this group, which included strong proponents as well as long-standing skeptics of the Clovis-First model, jointly authored a report on American antiquity. They concluded by consensus that the site is both archaeological and 12,500 years old, as Tom de la Haye has argued.
That acceptance broke the logjam of skepticism around pre-Clovis dwellings. It also helped that Clovis contemporary or pre-Clovis sites have popped up in Venezuela and Brazil.
Monteverde site was indeed 12,500 years old, and so the oldest accepted human site in the Americas.